The first time that I started teaching, the first time standards were introduced to me, I just kind of glazed over, tuned out, and started thinking about something else because it was, to me, it was just a bunch of fluff from the state. But as I got into it, I started looking more and more at the standards, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, this is stuff I'm doing anyways. And then I started finding out where each standard fit. And we have some professional development where we talk amongst each other as teachers, and we help each other do that part of it. But what I would say is most of the time, the standards are being met. A lot of it's common sense stuff. You just got to find out where it fits in your actual lesson. I didn't do warm-ups for a long time because I'm like, no, we're just going to go in the shop and get straight to work. But I mean, especially after lunch, you have students come in and they're just wound up, you know, and they're talking or playing games or doing something. So initially, at the beginning of the year, we start out with like a vocabulary and parts identification warm-up where the table has all the parts. Everybody's got a part in front of them, and when I call attendance, they have to tell me what the part is. And of course, at the beginning of the school year, I help them, and then they start helping each other, and then eventually everybody knows what everything is, and we mix up the parts, and everybody's a different part every day. But once they get bored of the parts, you got to try something new. So the reading warm-up is something we just kind of started. I use a lot of technology to turn in assignments and whatnot. We use currently a Moodle website, and in the Moodle website, there's a journal and forum option where you can create a forum for your class, or you can create journals. So what we do is the students come in and right away they grab their computers, they log into their Moodle site, they can see the prompt while I'm reading, and while their computer's booting up, they can follow along in the book. And I'll just read maybe 2-3 pages a day, and that takes 2 to 3 minutes, and then I give them another 6 to 7 minutes to respond to the prompt for the day. And that kind of gets them in auto shop mode, if you will. And then just by doing that, doing the warm-up, getting their attention, putting them in auto shop mode, I'm hitting some of the standards. All right, page 11, finding a good home. In summary, an independent shop is a very good place to work and learn. A tech will develop a more rounded set of skills there because he or she will be exposed to many different types of repairs, which will challenge the mind and force the tech to develop a wider range of problem-solving abilities. At an independent shop, there will also be more opportunities to improve your people skills, certainly one of the most important tools in a long and successful career. So why don't you give me four qualities that you would like your place of employment to have? Start reading while you guys are wrapping up. Okay, a few of these journal entries. At my place of employment would be a place that helps out the community whenever they can. It would also be nice to work at a place where people trust you. I would like to work somewhere you can move up the ladder nice and quickly. I would also like to work at a nice small shop where you can get your own personal work done free. My warm-up today, I read 2 or 3 of the replies to the prompt, and sometimes I try to find the bad ones, and I read the bad ones, and I look around and I say, you're in high school, guys. What did that sound like? You know, and they don't really pick on each other. They just kind of think about it and they go, I need to try harder. And usually that student won't do it again. I've always made the students look up the service procedure because I can sit there and tell them, okay, take off those bolts next, but then they're never going to know what that part's called or how many bolts there are, and they're just not going to learn as well as if they actually put in the effort to find the service information and look at the procedure where it says remove the valve cover. They're going to say, Sevilla, what's the valve cover? Click on the picture, and then they click on the picture, and then they print out the picture, and they walk to the car, and they look at it, and they go, oh, I see it. I got to do all these bolts. Great. So I assume that they know English when they come here. That's just an automatic human nature thing, I think. So when I have them looking up procedures and they read service information, that's technical reading. I never learned the word technical reading until I got into education. It was just something that I grew up with because when I was a little guy and I would work on my motorcycle, my dad gave me a manual, gave me a motorcycle, and gave me a helmet, right? And I was like, okay, this thing doesn't run. What do I do? And I start doing technical reading when I was a little guy. So I assume, human nature again, that all these students had those same experiences. But then when I started working at Madison, I realized, wait a minute, some of my students don't have dirt bikes or mini bikes or lawnmowers or weed whackers or any other of those gas-powered devices. Some of them don't have bicycles. So some of them don't have tools. And it surprises me. Sometimes I have a student who's never twisted a screwdriver. So when we talk about technical reading, I do try to start, now that I know this stuff and I'm aware of it, I do try to start at the very simplest of stages. When I start my lessons and I give them the worksheet, I go through the steps and I ask them each step, where do you find this? Where do you find that? And they start to learn, oh, this is the service information part where I go to the computer or the book and I get the information. Oh, this is the part that I go to the car and work on the car. At the beginning of the year, we role play and we write work orders as, I'm the customer, you're the customer. Great, and how do I get a hold of you? And you get the phone number, and what's the best way, if I had to mail you something, what would be the best way to mail you something? And then you get the mailing address, and how did you spell your name? So in case you forget the name. So I teach them all the right words and how to communicate with customers without offending them. Every story should contain the concern, cause, and correction of what happened to the car. The customer comes in with a concern. My brake light's not working, okay? The cause. Inspected brake lamp system, found open circuit in brake lamp switch. Okay, that was the cause. Correction, replaced and adjusted brake lamp switch, brake lights now work properly. That's my expectation. And if the students don't write a story that well, they get their paper back. They do an estimate, which requires looking up parts, which requires a lot of technical reading. And then I think the meat and potatoes of it is when they actually read the procedure and when they write the stories. So math is interesting because math in automotive is different than math in engineering, which is different than math in a math classroom. But it's all the same. So that's the interesting thing about math. So when we talk about math in automotive, a lot of it's geometry, but a lot of it's basic arithmetic and algebra as well. An example of that is there's a crankshaft station and they have to identify the taper of a crankshaft journal. And they're measuring that journal in multiple places. And then they have to figure out the differences in those numbers, how much taper there is in that journal. And by doing that math, there's some basic algebraic math going on there, but I can't teach it from a math perspective because I never learned it from a math perspective. I learned it from a we got to fix this thing perspective, and that number's too big, so we need to send that crankshaft out and get fixed. There's numbers here for the diameter of the wheel, so they have to recognize the diameter of the wheel. So there's a 12, 14, 16, and then there's a little mark there, so they can line that up. Tire pressure, we cover a lot of that. At the beginning of the year, we have a bunch of parts laid all over the place, and micrometers everywhere, and vernier calipers. They're just measuring everything. So I think as a student, learning it in their math class and learning it here, sometimes they are not able to tie it together. So one of the things I'm looking forward to in the future is working with the math department so that some of our terminology matches, so that the students can start to tie it together, and when they're in their math class, they can go, oh, now I see where I can use that in the real world, instead of when am I ever going to use this. When we do alignments, there's math involved. When we balance a tire, there's math involved. Everything from measuring the wheel to measuring the tire to measuring the out of round and lateral run out, the radial run out. So almost everything there to do, there's math involved. A neat story is I had a student who didn't understand the SAE designation of wrench sizes because it's all fractional. He's like, Sevilla, I'm not good at fractions. I'm not good at fractions. So I opened up my toolbox drawer, and all the wrenches are in order, lined up, and it starts at 1 inch, and then it goes 15/16, 7/8, 13/16, 3/4, and all the way down to 1/4 inch. But instead of reading the fraction to him, I did it all in 16ths, and I just pointed at each one. And bing, he goes, I get it. Now I get it. I totally get how to reduce now, or how to simplify a fraction. So it was kind of neat. So I would never think of that as math, but that's something a math teacher is required to teach. So everything we do in this classroom is I would say, tied to math somehow.